So our mission at Immersive Rehab is to make virtual reality part of the standard care, basically. I know it's the last presentation, so I want you to move a bit, basically. So not a lot, but a little bit. So I would like like to ask you to put up your thumb, and now to move it. Just like hold your hand and move it, yeah. And then now close your eyes and do the same thing. You can open your eyes again. It's fine. It's very easy. Everybody can do it. It's very natural. A lot of people actually that have neurological conditions, such as a stroke, for example, it's not that evident anymore. It's because of the way the brain has been damaged. Keep that in mind, and we'll go forward now. So 9 years ago, I had a severe accident. Sorry, I had a severe accident myself, so I went through a long rehab period. So I had a work accident that basically took away my independence for quite some time. So I went through a long rehab period myself. I had no balance or bad balance for about 2 years. Suffered a head injury, neck injury, and basically heavy vertigos. And from the whole experience, losing my independence was the most devastating. I was 29 at the time, and at the height of my life, and suddenly your life changes in a second. And I'm an engineer myself, mechanical/biomedical, and I wanted to use technology to change the way I went through rehab, which was often very boring, demotivating, isolating, in the way it was being approached. And so I started looking into different conditions as well, spinal injury, traumatic brain injury, stroke as well. And I came across really staggering numbers, especially in terms of upper limb rehab gains. And a lot of it, like you might know someone that had a stroke, for example. When you go through rehab, usually you would go, or you have a stroke, you enter the hospital, you would go through rehab for about 6 to 8 weeks, where one, it's very limited time, and upper limb rehab on top of that is really very hard for physiotherapists themselves to actually achieve really good improvements there. And the reason is that a lot of the exercises that are being done, basically using an object, a lot of the patients will get really frustrated, demotivated in the way it's being done, because one, they can't hold it sometimes because of lack of strength, or they maybe can hold it, but they can't move it because they don't have the fine motor skills, for example, or the ability to move their arm to the way holding the object. And so from the half an hour of rehab, let's say that they're doing, they might only be doing a few minutes. And so they leave the hospital after the 8 weeks with very limited amount of mobility gain, upper limb. And so when talking to lots of physios, we were talking about a concept that is called neuroplasticity. Essentially, for example, when you have a stroke or, I don't know, it's fine. You have a stroke or a brain injury, part of your brain gets damaged. And with a stroke, it affects your mobility in a lot of cases. Often it's part of your body that is affected. But essentially, there's nothing wrong with your arm. It's the connection between your brain and your arm that has been damaged because of the injury. So what if we could, and that's why obviously physiotherapy, neurorehabilitation is so important, because by doing movements over and over again, and we use it all the time as well, when you learn new things, especially kids as well, the more you do it, the better you become at it. And brushing your teeth, you can do it asleep almost. You take your toothbrush, you know which movement you have to do. When your brain has been damaged, you basically don't, in some cases, you're not able to do it anymore, but you have to relearn how to do it. And that's basically where the connection with immersive rehab and virtual reality came about, because what now is in a lot of cases impossible to do is having patients engage with objects. Most physios, you just ask patients to move their arm 20 times like this, 20 times lift it, 20 times reaching. One, you don't see the point of doing the exercises, you don't see the progress in the same way, and it also doesn't help you recover because you're not engaging with any objects in the same way as you would do in virtual reality. And so the compliance is really bad. Also, waiting times are incredibly long. Sometimes it's up to 9 months before there's any rehab offered. So we miss a really big opportunity of recovery. And so within virtual reality and the fully immersive virtual reality, we can actually allow people to engage with objects, virtual object, but because it's so immersive, you're actually thinking that you're moving objects around. They don't have weight, so it helps people to actually build up their strength and their mobility up to the time that then they can actually go and use normal objects to gain more independence back when they're doing their exercises. That's actually David Smith, who was a Paralympic athlete for Great Britain in 2012. He was a gold medalist in rowing, but he's also spinal tumor patient, so he's paralyzed 3 times from the waist down and upper limb affected like a stroke. But after he was using visual stimulation constantly during his rehab, and he was walking in most cases after 8 to 10 weeks again. So yeah, this is one of our exercises where basically the aim is it's based on the grasping method. So patients have to reach. They have to do rotation movements and lift their arm. Here, we basically mix up all the movements. We allow and we give them a challenge. So they need to build towers within a specific time, which is they can do sitting, standing, and they can train their balance and their mobility skills. And we have a variety of exercises like this, which then progress in how patients will progress going forward, become more complicated. And there's always a cognitive aspect to our exercises as well, as most conditions that we work with. They have cognitive deficits because of the condition that they're going through. So just to go through 2 case studies of people that we work with. So the patients that we target, they have a neurological disorder or condition, which is stroke, spinal cord injury, MS, ALS, Parkinson's, for example. And so these are 2 people that I've worked with. One is a very young male in his 20s who had a spinal injury, but also a severe traumatic brain injury because of the accident. And his concentration deficit was really severe. So after 1 minute, he wouldn't do anything anymore. He was not engaged anymore. And the physio, the only really aim of the physio was to see, can we actually engage the patient for longer than that minute? Can we actually let him do more exercises? Because he had been in the hospital for quite some time and they had not made any progress. And so that was really very interesting to see that he just wanted to do it over and over again. He was very engaged. He also had ownership of what he was doing because he was in the virtual environment. He was operating the game as much as possible on his own. And then he was doing the exercises. So engagement is really key in recovery. And to achieve the number of repetitions and to really make a difference in their rehabilitation. Another person, and that was also very interesting, is that, and I've seen that with several patients, is that when you have an injury, you're going through rehab, or you will always be protective of the limb or the part of your body that has been affected. So you will be very careful to not, let's say, go too far with a movement and so on. And so there's this limitation in movements just because you went through a severe trauma. And so when he was doing exercise with the physio just before, and she had asked him, can you just move your arm there? He would stop here, and yeah, I can't move it further. Within our block building exercise, because we gave him a challenge, he was just moving very smoothly, pretty smoothly, further than he was doing it in the physical world. Because he had a challenge in mind, he wanted to complete the challenge. And that was for himself. When we showed him the videos afterwards, really a confidence boost as well, in terms of I can actually do more than I think I can do, and it can help me in my recovery. And for the physio, obviously, that's also was really a great outcome. So our system has an intelligence behind it, in the sense that machine learning is a very important tool in terms of it allows us to create environments that, if we come back to the block building game, how matter fun it is when you're doing it, after a month, if you would be doing the same exercise, it will become boring as well. And so to avoid that situation, we create adaptive, personalized environments as well, because no condition is the same, and so no treatment, no rehabilitation program for the patient should be the same for everyone. So let's say two people start with the same program. After a month, they will progress differently. So that means that our program will progress differently with them as well. And that then will feed into predictive analytics going forward in terms of decision making for the physios, but also objective patient assessments. I don't know if you've ever been through physio. Often the assessments are being done on a very subjective scale. One physio might say you're a 5. You might switch physios. They might say you're a 7 on their scale. And it's very hard then if you then transfer, let's say, city or country, and then you get your report with you, nobody knows really what it means. And then also for MS patients, in addition, it's very critical because often they are home more than other patients, and then they would come in, and it directly creates this stressful situation if the physician, clinician, therapist would ask, how have you been doing the past weeks? Or, well, someone might say, good, I think, or I don't know. But we want to skip that conversation where the physio, the clinician can directly see, okay, you've been progressing, you've been doing your exercises, you haven't been doing them. Was there a reason behind it? Why? So that it kind of becomes also a non-blaming situation as well. And then obviously enabling remote care, and that's obviously where 5G will play a really important role, because today it's very hard. Telemedicine is at a very, very early stage of what it can become. And that's really because one, data transfer is not really, we can't really do it in a very reliable way today. And we're dealing with patient data as well, but especially because of the networks, etc. If you are in different cities and so on, and you want to transfer data in a kind of real-time way to the physio, 5G will enable a lot of those things which currently are not really possible just because of unreliable networks as well. So this is our vision, and this is what we want to do with Immersive Rehab is we focus on neurorehabilitation and upper limb mobility balance training to give people more independence back, because essentially if you're able to dress yourself, type something, use a computer, cook, you get so much reward for that yourself, because your confidence grows slowly as well. And so we want to implement it in the acute phase in the hospital when they enter to get rid of, to reduce waiting times as well, to get better outcomes when they leave the hospital. But then obviously, if we leave the gap in the home setting again, we don't want to do that. We will also want to bring it in the home setting and ensure that there's a whole pathway of when the patient comes in until they go home and feeds back into the clinician. And obviously, patient data transfer in all these settings is critical to ensure that we optimize the programs to the patients and make it very individualized as well. So 5G there will really enable us to do that. It will allow us much faster transfer of data, but also in particular reliable, in a reliable way to transfer the data. And also the fact virtual reality today, especially if we use the higher end VR, so latency is really critical to not have any delays in when you're doing the experiences, and that's really for everyone that does VR, but in particular for our patients, because stroke patients are sensitive to epileptic seizures, motion sickness, vertigos is very severe, so there can't be anything that induces those things within our experiences, and any form of latency might induce that. So with 5G, now we can't stream from the cloud, for example, our experiences. We do everything locally, but with 5G, we would be able to stream from the cloud. And that would really enable us in a good way as well, no delays and so on. So that would really enable remote care and telemedicine, really. And yeah, my bold prediction is VR will become part of standard care. It will take time. I want to say 10 years, but yeah, obviously changing something in healthcare is incredibly challenging. It is a very conservative space, but it has so much potential. It has already proven a lot of potential in pain management, in psychological treatments, and in rehabilitation now as well. And if we can really, what we've seen is that patients and physicians really respond incredibly well to it. And it's all about the technology that is now evolving still, the networks that are evolving, but it will get to the place where we will have a VR headset in everybody's homes, like we have a mobile phone in everybody's home. In a hospital, it will be a standard tool that physios will have next to all the other tools that they have available to them. So yeah, please get in touch, and thank you for listening.